This conference will now be recorded.
Hello, welcome to the 2020 Design Challenge Pilot Contest Embodied Environmental Impact Office Hours. Thank you for joining us today. I wanted to give a little background and then we'll let our guest speakers, I'll turn it over to a colleague who's going to facilitate and we'll meet our guest speaker. So as a quick intro, as part of the 2020 Design Challenge, teams are invited to participate in a pilot embodied environmental impact contest. The contest is being piloted really to incorporate into future solar decathlon, with really the goal of expanding the competition to better understand the full life cycle of a building. Again, the participation is optional, highly encouraged by the organizers, and we will ask for feedback at the conclusion of this. So with that, I'll turn it over to my colleague, Michael Young, who works on the Build Challenge portion of the Solar Decathlon as we collaborate on this pilot contest.
Thanks, Rachel.
Michael, thanks.
Yeah, so as Rachel said, my name is Michael Young. I'm an assistant competition manager on the Build Challenge side of the Solar Decathlon, but we have come together to collaborate and organize this pilot contest to introduce the life cycle analysis of a building and looking at embodied environmental impacts, as Rachel mentioned. So thank you all for joining today. This time is for you. We wanted to open up an hour here with Rod Castro, who is a life cycle analysis expert with OneClick LCA. He's here to help answer any questions that you all have. So, you know, with that, you know, I feel like we can open the floor and see if any teams have joined. If you have any particular questions for Rod that you'd like to start with, feel free to speak up and chime in, and I'll just be here to help kind of facilitate and move things along. But hopefully Rod can share his screen and provide some good, you know, focused, targeted answers to your questions. So with that, we'll see who has any questions.
Hi, this is Joe. I was just wondering if, Rod, you might be able to introduce yourself, your history with the Solar Decathlon, and really just talk through why you think OneClick LCA or lifecycle analysis in general is so important for designers and students to consider.
Great. Thank you. Can everybody hear me well?
Yep, I can hear you.
Yeah, great. Thanks. Well, thank you, everybody. As Simon and Michael and Rachel were kindly to introduce me. My name is Rod Castro. I work with OneClick LCA as an LCA expert. My experience with the Solar Decathlon started in 2011 when I participated and competed with a team out of Florida in the competition, and it's very close to my heart, and I'm really looking forward to helping you out with this pilot credit. One of the main reasons why embodied carbon is so important, it is as buildings become more efficient, energy efficient, or the grid is actually decarbonizing, the big elephant in the room that's left is actually the embodied impacts in materials. And that is where we can actually make a great impact in reducing carbon emissions worldwide. So I'm really happy that you have decided to participate in this pilot credit, and I'm here to help you with any of your questions. So please be free to ask. Thanks.
Thanks, Rod. I see we do have a few, looks like a few team members from the Design Challenge who've called in. Maybe we could start by going around just seeing which teams we have represented, and if any of you want to just chime in and start, we can go from there.
Great. Yes.
Hi, I'm not with a team, but I do have a question. Can you talk through really if a team is using something like advanced building construction techniques, such as modular construction, or a new type of material that the university has developed, maybe something like fly ash concrete using repurposed aggregate or other areas, how would you go about trying to model something that the team is really proud of, but maybe isn't stock in the tool?
Great. Well, maybe the easiest way will be to show you directly. Let me share my screen with you quickly here. So basically here, I'm showing you a screen, and as an example, something that a project that I created, a design example, and a proposal, which has an with improvements. I included the tools that are part of the Decathlon license, both for Lifecycle Carbon and the Building Circularity tool here. And as you have played with this before, you could go directly into the Building Materials tab, where you input data and take a look at what's available. A lot of the database in OneClick LCA is based on actual materials from the market. That mean EPD data, environmental product declarations. However, it is possible to also look for materials based on generic information. And this is something that could help Michael's questions before, in which you could look up, for instance, on the concrete mix options that could be the ones that you're looking for. So let's say I click here, filter my information, and just basically take a look at what's available in the database. So you have here some samples in which you substitute cement in the mix for other binders, if that has made any change. So this would be a good way to actually test assumptions in your project. It's also a possibility that if you have materials, you could actually make a request via our help menu to incorporate data by clicking on request to add new data. Yep. Does that answer your questions, Michael or Simon?
Yeah, I think that was Joe's question, but
Joe's question.
I think that does help answer really well. The ability to click that help button and send the information for a new or novel material to OneClick LCA is a great feature. That's really helpful.
Yes, thank you.
So another question that I had is I was playing around with the tool and going through the different steps, and I was wondering if you could tell us more about the completeness and plausibility checker. It seems like it's there to kind of help track your progress and give you feedback on how much more you need to do or how well you're filling out the LCA. Can you just tell us a little bit more about that and what it means and how it works?
Yes, absolutely. So what we have in store, and here I see it again from the building materials perspective or tab. To access the completeness and plausibility checker, you just click on the arrow here, and that displays the information found in your in this tool. Sorry, it actually sent me out. Please forgive me, and I will go back again into the project. Okay, coming back here, sorry about that. You just basically go into the building materials, your project, and what it does, the completeness and plausibility checker allows you to see what of the scope of your typical project you will cover. In this case, for instance, I had a sample project and I forgot to actually classify maybe information related to structural slab on grade system, and that immediately warns me about this. There are other things that could be part of a typical project, and they appear here in this yellow. Oh, I don't know what's sending me out of this. I apologize again.
It's okay, no problem.
Yeah, and basically what it has, it shows is ranges of typical materials that we have found or collected for archetypical building types. So that, and we go to the this other tool here. I will access this through here. So the way that this is set up is by ranges. So let's say that you have a foundation mass. You would typically have a range of in kilograms per square meter that is above 100 kilos of CO2. I'm sorry, of material per square unit area. So this is actually quite below the range. This project has 16.6 kilos per cubic meter, square meter. So that's why the type appears with a potential error or red cross here. It could be that your product actually has done this on purpose because it substitutes the system for another that has a less mass than the typical foundation system. So you just simply validate it. And that's one way to go about it. Otherwise, you immediately can see that this might be a problem in your project, and you just need to look into how the material information is set up and what you can do to improve it. Otherwise, well, in addition to that, you can check other materials data here that relates to structural mass, finishes, maybe the overall embodied carbon that is expected as a range in your project, and so on. The materials included here are the most common ones or have the highest impacts in your project. It will not include everything, but it can quickly help you find out which of these, how you meet or fall within the ranges for these groups. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, that was very helpful. Thank you.
Welcome.
So I see we've had a few more people join the webinar here, and again, I'd just like to say if any team members out there have questions about OneClick LCA, feel free to speak up or write them in the chat box, and we can kind of go through those questions that way and ask Rod. But in the meantime, I'll go through. I have another couple questions here that I think might be helpful for everyone. So the next one, Rod, I wanted to ask you about was the transportation element of a life cycle analysis. And we know this can be a big chunk of emissions depending on where you are sourcing materials. But how is shipping distance taking into account when maybe you're using a generic material, so you don't know the exact location of the factory or the warehouse that the material is coming from? How does OneClick LCA do that?
Oh, okay. That's so there are two ways that in OneClick we manage that information. Let me go back to the workspace where I have all my designs. On one hand, under parameters, you can actually set up average distances that we have collected from market experience. And basically you can set up here and say what the typical transportation distance is. And you can use that as a baseline to work with. You set it in US miles, and that could actually help you. That's one way to work it. Maybe I will do that, and that could make it clear. So I just save this, and this will add the distance component normally reported in an LCA under what's called a module A4. If by any chance you have doubts or questions about what I just said, and I mean on regards to the information module, you can quickly check on the customer page here and see LCA stages here. And when you click here, you see that the standard in which materials are or life cycle impacts are reported follows international standards. And these have these codes here. 8.4 is the one representing transportation from manufacturing facility to construction site, and that's related to your question before. Now, as I said, you could use the average distance as I created in the parameters, but inside the tool, it is possible to also add that information yourself based on what you know. So when you go into the building materials tab, each line item will give you the option to actually change that information. Here is the defaults that I just set it for 220 miles for this styrofoam insulation. But you could find out that maybe in your location, this actually was 130 miles, and you just simply change it. Also, you would have default transport methods or modes, and like in this case, a trailer combination. You could change those depending on your location, but normally the default value is quite accurate to what you need. So those are the two ways in which you can handle the impacts from transportation from the manufacturing facility to your construction site.
Right. Okay. So you can make, you can kind of override the default and enter your own mileage value and make your own assumptions as you go through the project.
Yes, exactly.
Right. Okay.
In the question box, Jody is asking whether there's a requirement to provide evidence of transportation distances. I guess that's for the organizers to say.
Yeah. Thanks for the question, Jody. At this time, since this is a pilot contest and we're not evaluating on specific criteria, we would ask that whatever you provide to us for this portion of your submission, we would love to see a narrative that explains the decisions that you made, the reasons for making those decisions. So while there's not necessarily a requirement to provide evidence of transportation distances, it would certainly be helpful for us to, as organizers, for us to understand why you made a certain choice or what led to you entering a certain mileage value based on the location of your project and where you are assuming that the materials would be coming from. And if that doesn't answer your question, oh, great. Okay, awesome. And Rachel, if you have anything else to add to that, feel free to answer from the organizer's perspective.
Nope, that was great. Thanks.
Yep.
Okay.
So what about reclaimed materials from a building demolished on site? So is this, I'm assuming this question means you are building on a site where a building was previously, built on that site. You're demolishing and then rebuilding on the same plot of land. Rod, is there anything in OneClick LCA that I know the circularity assessment looks at the reuse of materials and whether you're sourcing virgin materials or recycled, reused materials, but is there a way for the teams to specifically, specify that material and the fact that it's coming from reclaimed materials?
That is a very good question, and at this point, you can only measure the impact through the building circularity tool in the sense of what materials flow inside a typical LCA. That would mean that the material, in a sense, does not have an impact for your project because it was already part of it, in a matter of speaking. So it's not something that you add to this analysis. So you could basically include that maybe as a line item, and as an example, I'll give you what I'm showing you in the screen. This is styrofoam insulation. Assuming that you could reclaim it and actually add it, you could basically say, well, I'm going to apply it as a zero material here, but you make a note and say 96% of square meters, and well, let's say, well, whatever unit you're working, let's say square feet maybe, with thickness of 6 inches was reclaimed. So you keep a note of what that impact was or material line item is, but you do not account it in your analysis, if that makes sense.
Okay. Oh, and yep, great. Jody says that helped answer the question. That's great. Thank you, Rod.
You're welcome.
So I see 2 more questions just came in. One of them says, for renovation projects, should we specifically do LCA impact analysis of our renovation work? I'm guessing that question is directed more towards the organizers. And I would say for renovation, or Rachel, go ahead.
No, go ahead. You go ahead.
I was just going to say for renovation projects, I think, again, with this being a pilot contest with no really strict requirements, we would love to see what how you approach the LCA, given the guidance that we've provided for the pilot contest. An LCA of the materials that you use, any new materials that come into a renovation, whether you are, gutting mechanical and electrical systems and retrofitting the interior of a building, or if it's more comprehensive than that, we'd be interested to know what your approach would be to something like this. But again, at this time, with this contest being an optional pilot contest for this year, there are no strict requirements to say exactly how to approach a renovation project. But Rachel, if you have anything else to add to that, please feel free.
That was great. Thank you.
Yeah, if I may, I would like to add something to the possibility of actually using LCA for renovation, which is actually something that we had found in the market of great interest in especially what's called TI, or tenant improvements projects. Again, when you are reusing reclaimed materials on site, that is something that already exists as part of your project, in a matter of speaking. So it's not a new material that you're bringing in to the process. That being said, it is possible that that reinstallation or reuse of the material will imply energy consumption or other resources. And you could actually report that under the tab called construction site operations here. So you do not account for the actual material itself, but you do include what could actually have meant to, for instance, use a that reclaim or renovated material here based on energy consumption, water, and so on, and other fuel types, or even new waste generated that comes out of it. That being said, when you renovate, you're actually also adding new materials, and that could be part of the LCA analysis. So anything that you're saying, like adding a new flooring system, maybe some new interior partitions, or new window for the external areas, all of those components that are new to the system are part of the LCA. And that would allow you to do scenarios, different scenarios in the analysis. Okay, Babia?
Thanks, Rod. That was a really helpful addition to show how OneClick LCA can consider renovations and what you would include and enter into the LCA for that.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Yeah. We have a question here about. Oh, go ahead, Rod.
Yeah, no, I was actually reading the question on the chat from Nathan, which mentions something, if I can elaborate more about the compatibility of OneClick with Revit. Yes. For instance, I have a Revit model here. I had opened it up. We do have a plugin in our website that you can download and install. And basically, you can use this to go through the import process on how to use it. Based on the time frame, I'm not gonna go into detail here, but again, I encourage you to go to our typical help menu here, and you can take a look at how this process works by looking for import Revit here, Revit integration, and basically walks you through videos and information on how the plugin works and how you can use it to import your material quantities. You have access to the plugin at the very bottom of the help page. Okay, so you don't need to actually download it from the Autodesk web store. You can actually download it from our website too. Something that I might important to add, Nathan, to this is the way that OneClick works is creates a snapshot of the project using the Revit plugin. It takes a quantity takeoff, imports it into OneClick, and maps it to the database that you have already seen in the building materials tab, and allows you to do the calculations. After that, there's no link between the BIM model and our software. Just to be clear on that. Okay. But you can do this as many times as you need, and you can create as many design options in your workspace to allow you to do this analysis. Great. Yodi had another question. If OneClick can allow multiple simultaneous users, yes, in principle, we do. The way that we set up the license for the competition was basically on a name user basis. If you had already set up or declare your team when you did your registration, it could be that we link user licenses to the same project. Otherwise, we don't know, and we couldn't actually do it. But our licenses allows us to have multiple simultaneous users. It just depends on how you have set it up and how we can help you in that regard. Okay.
From the organizer's perspective on that, if you have more questions about the registration and getting your team members signed up to use OneClick, Rod did share some guidance and some instructions for setting up that license, and we can send that to you if you'd like. So feel free to email the organizers, and we can share that information with you.
All right.
Great.
Great.
I don't see any other questions in the chat box right now, but feel free to continue typing them in. We're really happy to see this participation and these questions coming in. One other question that I wanted to ask that I think might be helpful for all of the teams as they go through OneClick LCA and try to look at their design from a lifecycle assessment perspective. Can you, Rod, tell us more about how a designer might go into this tool and sort of go through an optimization process rather than taking an existing design and just entering in the materials that were chosen? Is there any sort of iterative or comparative process to select materials that might have different impacts on the overall embodied carbon or embodied energy of the project and optimize the different pieces of the project?
Oh, yes, absolutely. So the easiest way to do this is either through when you do an import process. Let's say you add a new material. you will always have the option using the filter. Let me look for a good example here quickly. Let's say we're looking for a concrete mix. And you place it under using the pull down menu, and you have access to many resources here. A quick way, the first ones will always be generic. The second or afterwards are local manufacturer specific data. You can always click on the question mark just to give you an example. And in the data card, you can see all the information relevant to that data point. You can always download the EPD, but also depending on the type of material group, you can see the full ranking of this. And this allows you to quickly compare how this material matches or compares with other similar in your market. That's one way to do this. Another way is actually when you're doing the mapping process, you might actually start with some preliminary ideas. And in the results page, after you have already started with your market default material assignments, in the results table, you can go into the row called construction materials A1 to A3 and click on details. Here, it opens up a table with a summary of impacts per building assembly. And in red, you have by percentage where are located the highest impacts per impact category, in this case, global warming potential, and it's located here at the horizontal structure or slabs. So once you click into it, you immediately see that this is something found in the post-tension floor slab system, the ready-mix concrete element. And you can quickly see here, okay, it's a mix that has a 10% supplementary cementitious material. This is something that replaces the cement in the ready mix. And this, because of its impact, could be a good source of improvement. So that's a good way to actually identify quickly options for improving. And then it's just a matter of going back into your materials, looking for where that material is actually located here. Sorry, I'm going a bit fast. So horizontal structure, a post-tension slab. So we immediately see it here. And then the way to do this is basically unbundle this material group that I have. This is basically the way that I set it up myself, but you could actually not need to do this because you added the material separately. And once you do that, you're able to actually, access the material here and go into change and replace. And I think one powerful feature here is that you could quickly either type in something related to the previous material. You normally aim at replacing things or materials with the same performance. And then you take a look at what it could be, a 10% recycled content here, let's say either 20 or 30% recycled binders. And you have one data card next to another. And you can check it out by looking at the global warming potential per unit area here. So 270 kilos of CO2 equivalent by cubic meter versus 225 kilos of CO2. So this new material is much better, and you can quickly make that change by clicking on Save Your Replacement. So that's a good way to actually quickly look over options to make improvements. And of course, you always want to go back into your results table and check what the impact of that option is. And this starts with a point of that you are having multiple designs to compare. So you can quickly say, well, I want to compare that against my proposal. And maybe I just changed the baseline, so it probably didn't do a good impact here. But let's say, well, in this case, it reduced something in regards to the proposal, but not that much. But that's a good way to actually quickly see this information. Okay.
That's great. Really helpful. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So we had another question just come in saying, would you please elaborate about how to utilize discount rates? That seems like it might be a question about lifecycle cost analysis, which, Rod, does OneClick LCA consider lifecycle cost?
We do have a tool for lifecycle cost, but we did not include it into the version that for the pilot credit, as it was focused on embodied carbon. But just to answer Sari about this, let me quickly move into, for instance, let me just go into this material and let's take a look at the results table, and I will use that as an example. So there are many ways to visualize the impacts on your project. You either can have bar charts, bars, or so on, or bubble charts, Sankey diagrams, and so on. But in this case, this visualization by annual impacts could actually help you bring in this information. So here we have the initial impacts on materials. And then in yellow, at this point, you have an impact because you had to replace one material or another. It is possible to actually set this up into OneClick also. So from a lifecycle cost perspective, what it means is that not only are you incurring in an embodied carbon by doing this replacement of material, but a cost. And an LCC, it's calculated using a formula for net present value. So that means that you bring in this cost incurring year 35 into the present using a discount rate. And that's part of the assumptions that you have to build into your analysis. Okay. All right. You're welcome, Sari. But that is a good way to actually link both embodied carbon and cost into your analysis. So great question.
So I see we've had a few more people continue to join as this call has gone on, and I'd like to give another reminder that if you joined late, we are taking questions from any of the Solar Decathlon participants. If you'd like to type them into the chat box here on GoToMeeting, any questions about OneClick LCA, about the Embodied Environmental Impact Pilot Contest, this is your time to ask these questions of Rod Castro, our LCA expert, and of the competition organizers. So please feel free to type away and send us your questions. But in the meantime, while we're waiting for any additional questions, there is one more right now. Is there an educational rate for the lifecycle cost program? Are they linked in some way to reduce some of our work?
Okay. Yes. Let me quickly show you this. Yes, we do have educational rates for the software that we provide to universities and other educational institutions, even for research purposes. You just need to contact us and we'll be able to help you with that. We have different plans depending on the tools you want to work with. But as you mentioned, lifecycle costing, and this is the second question, let me show you that under available tools, we are able to provide this. We work globally, so there are many tools. So you need to choose this one will be chosen for you based on your license. But what it does is, once I add it, it synchronizes with the lifecycle assessment tool to use the same material database or material or bill of quantities. And in this case, the parameters for the LCC have been previously set up. But what I can show you is a typical analysis would include something like this. Some cost data I'm missing here. I'm missing energy consumption and other, so I can actually add it here. and whether I want to use it. Let's say, let me just put Maryland here quickly, just because this is a mandatory field. So every line item has a unit cost, and you can use that. If it doesn't have it, it's probably because I have to set up the default value or parameter for my analysis, but it should appear in a similar way to what you have here. And this is not right. Okay, it's just because I added this tool late. But as you can see, you have that value there. If I go to LCC parameters, it is possible, yeah, default, to come here, United States, regional cost parameters, and basically set up your discount rates and other inflation and labor rates here for your project analysis.
And I just wanted to chime in and, oh, go ahead. Yeah. Sorry, Rod. I thought you were finished.
Yeah, I just wanted to show you how it set it up. So basically, it synchronizes the bill of materials from the LCA and allows you to input additional information, not only energy cost, but other capital costs or operating costs that you want to include in your LCC. Yeah, that was it, what I want to say.
Okay. Well, thanks for all that. And just to answer, it looks like there's another question about this. To be clear, the Solar Decathlon teams have been provided with a free license to use the OneClick LCA software, and they have provided the building circularity tool and the embodied energy and embodied carbon tools as part of this free license. So the students and the team members participating in the Solar Decathlon have free access to this. There's no need to purchase a license or to set up a paid account to participate in our pilot contest for Solar Decathlon. And if you have more questions about that, please reach out to the competition organizers, and we'd be happy to answer those questions and point you to the instructions and the guidance for accessing this free license and setting up your account.
Yeah, absolutely. And Yodi, you have made a further requests regarding university and student licenses. The easiest way is in our website. Just contact us, and we'll be happy to, under pricing here, you can quickly student licenses, as you saw there. Sorry, probably went a bit fast, but my colleague who works on that segment will be able to help you. All right. But as Joe said, we do provide all the tools for the pilot credit or at no cost to you. So I hope you really make use of them and
Thank you. So we have about 15 minutes left in our office hour here with Rod Castro to ask your questions about OneClick LCA and about the Embodied Environmental Impact Contest. So any other questions, please feel free to continue typing them in. We're really happy about this participation. And a reminder that this webinar is being recorded, so you can come back and rewatch this and catch anything you might have missed, or if you joined late. So I have one more question I was going to ask Rod to see if he could provide a little bit more detail, but we will start to wind down our time here after this if no one else has any questions. But one of my last questions was just about benchmarking and comparing your project to peer projects or to different building standards such as LEED and things like that. Can you show us how that is used and how you can benchmark your project against others?
Okay, so actually there are two ways to do this. And one is we have collected national data, which is what you see here in this embodied carbon benchmark box at the upper left corner here. under results and benchmark. This is data that has been kindly, it's anonymized, and it has been kindly provided by some of our clients that have projects in North America and in US, specifically in this case. And what it allows us is to basically provide you with a range of impacts by building area. We use a similar visualization as the one used for energy efficiency, in which the higher the impact, it uses the red through yellows down to the greens, meaning the less embodied carbon you have, the better your building is. And in this case, you can easily use this as a reference. Going back to the earlier question, if we recall about comparability or the completeness calculator. Sorry about that. Oh, I went inside the LCC, sorry. Let me go into the LCA tool. It is also possible here to see that your typical building will have an embodied range or impact that will range between 150 to 1,000 kilograms of CO2 equivalent per square meter. That is industry data that we have collected at the industry level. With the license, it is also possible to create what's called a portfolio license that goes with some more advanced features. This is something that we offer to the organizers in case to check their projects, and it could be used later, but it's not readily available in the license that we provided the participants at this point. Okay.
Got it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So as I had mentioned, that was the last sort of pre-written question that I had from the organizer's perspective. I'd like to, again, remind anyone on the call to type in any additional questions you have. And if there are no more at this time, I'd like to thank Rod from OneClick LCA for his time and for all of his great assistance in walking us through these questions and providing so much support for this pilot contest. And the enthusiasm is great. So Rachel, I'll let you if you have any. Oh,
this is Joe. I just have a demo question for Rod. As someone who has participated in the Solar Decathlon and now works in a field supporting carbon reduction and the impact of our built environment, do you have any advice for students listening as they go through school, plan graduation, find jobs, startups, or other activities? Just not necessarily LCA tied, but just your own experience growing from a student to working in the industry.
Yes, absolutely. One of the things that I would recommend is, to me, one of the greatest benefits of the experience of the Solar Decathlon was not only the excitement of actually putting a building together, but it was the integration of working with other team members, people from different specialties. It could be what's it called? Specialties, interior designs, architects, engineers, and so on. And that was such an enriching experience. It really helped me and open up a lot of ways to see what it means to put a building together. Yeah.
Thank you, Rod. We appreciate your expertise and experience this morning. This is a great opportunity for the design talents to be collaborating with OneClick LCA, and we really appreciate it.
You're welcome. My pleasure. If the last thing I could say is, I cannot emphasize it enough, is please take a look at the help menu in the support section. There's a lot of information there that could help you as you play in with the tool. There are guidances and videos that are ready for you to use, and it could easily help you answer many of your questions during this process. And I wish you the best and great success in this competition in the future.
Wonderful, thank you. And thank you everyone for your participation today. And we look forward to seeing what you've found through this process and what you've learned and whatever you end up submitting as part of this pilot contest. So thank you to all, and I think that's it. Rachel, any other closing remarks? And otherwise we can close out.
Thank you all for your attendance today. Please let us know if you have further questions. Have a great day.
Great. Thank you, everybody.
You too.